Welcome, welcome very much to Conversation. It is a distinct personal pleasure and honor for me to welcome to Conversations a dear, 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 dear friend and somebody for whom I have unlimited esteem and admiration, that being Paul Levinson PhD. And Paul, it's so good to welcome you to the set after all these years. It's good to be back together.
I'm thrilled. The last time I was here with like 1725 or something?
I don't know. I know we did that one in '99, way back when the cell phones were the size of a brick and everything like that. And everything. But you're a major figure, academic, and then very interested in media and the understanding. You knew of Marshall. We're a personal friend of Marshall McLuhan, the dean of understanding things digital, and we're going to be talking about the digital world, digitization of everything. That seems to be coming in exponential terms now since we last talked. There's a lot of catching up. Bear with me in my ignorance. I think I'll be reflective of a lot of people in the society who are a bit baffled by the implications of all the digitization of the world that's going on now. But anyway, so good to see you. And so with that said, why don't we talk about that? So where we picked up where we did and some of you did your program about cell phone, very easy, the significance of that.
Yes, and actually, the cell phone is a good place to start.
Okay, good.
Because we did that in 2004.
You and I, you mean?
You and I.
Yeah, okay.
And already in 2004, the cell phone was beginning to give people the capacity to email and to log on to the internet.
Right.
I had already, back in fact in 1999, called the internet the medium of media because you could do everything and anything on the internet. That was in the late 90s.
Yeah, did you call it the medium of abundance, or is that wrong? You were talking the older media was a scarcity.
Yeah.
That was something we talked about.
We did talk about it. That sounds like something we talked about. That's right.
Sidebar.
Yeah. But so in 2004, little did I know that the cell phone was right on the cusp of really becoming even more than a mobile telephone, a way to access what was online, any place, anywhere you might happen to be.
Anytime.
That's right. And so what began happening then were a variety of things. First of all, by 2005, 2006, 2007, you have new systems like Twitter and YouTube that didn't even exist before.
I know that.
And to give you an idea about how important that was, and I'll get back to the cell phone in a second, Howard Dean in 2004
he was running strong.
That's right. He was known as the Internet candidate.
Yeah.
But his campaign didn't succeed, and I think it was in part because there were no social media back then. There was a little blogging, there was the internet, but there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. However, beginning in 2005, 2006, and really in many ways the decisive moment in history was in 2007 and 2008 when the iPhone is released. And really for the first time, and in retrospect it was a very clumsy, primitive device compared to what we have now. Well, it wasn't. It was nice enough. It was thin enough, but it wasn't as brickish as the early cell phones. But it was certainly thicker than today's smartphones. But that device allowed people to tweet, look at YouTube, get their email, get onto Facebook anytime they wanted. And that's when something very profound happened.
Yeah, they hadn't had Facebook.
That's right. Well, Facebook, that's right. That goes back maybe like 2002. In fact, my son, Simon, who is now a senior editor, he's great. He's a senior editor at Rolling Stone.
How's the dog?
The dog.
He barked for us on the phone the other day. He had a nice rounding bark,
The dog, though, is our daughter's dog. Molly and her husband, Carlos. The dog's name is Puka. It's a very nice bark. Puka, it's a Brazilian name.
I want you to come over and meet our dog, our new dog. He's funnier than Charlie Chaplin,
these
I
dogs,
swear to God.
They're hilarious.
Yeah, they are.
They have like innate senses of humor.
Yeah, I do. So, let me say something. I've been out of it. I'm really glad to get back in touch with you, Mark Stallman, Doug Rushkoff, and the people who are really understanding the intellectualized way, the implication of these extended media capabilities that are so characteristic of the moment. But I saw a program on the Science Channel one night, It came out and it was talking about the major events in the history of the world in terms of affecting the human condition, you know, the steam engine and that. And they had a countdown like the hit parade and everything. And they got down and they said, okay, this and this. And then they got down to the top 5 things that have influenced in a qualitative, near qualitative way the human condition. And it came down, and they finally got down to, you know, the mouse and then the computer. And then they got down and drum roll, brrr, the most important development in terms of changing the human condition ever in the history of the whole universe, the smartphone. They said it's in a class all by itself in terms of its implications. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it makes a lot of sense.
To me, it made some sense not understanding, but you understand it in depth, how all these things fit together.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a tiny, tiny bit of hyperbole there.
It might be. We sometimes get it in television.
Yeah. I would say the most important invention, and to some extent it was a biological invention because it was genetically based, was speech. There was a time in our prehistoric history when something that we might consider human beings didn't have speech. You know, they were more like great apes and chimps, whose DNA is over 99.
I think we come out of Homo erectus.
That's right.
About 200,000 years ago, apparently.
That's right. And we're not even clear that Neanderthals had speech. You know, they may have communicated in some ways, but once we began to have the ability to talk about things that were not physically present.
That's interesting.
And that's an extremely important point because, again, think about like 2 groups of people. They're living on the savannah of Africa, and in both cases there is a pack of lions that is closing in on them.
Those cats used to eat us with regularity.
Exactly.
Yeah, we were like rabbits.
That's right.
Lions.
That's right. So one group of people who do not have speech, all they can do is gesture and make noise, but the other group that has speech is able to say in whatever their language is, hey, there's a hungry, mean group of lions, you know, a few miles away. Let's get out of here.
Could I share something with you?
Yeah.
In my building where I live, you been there?
No, I don't
You're
think
going to
so.
have to come. But anyway,
I will.
Anyway, a great musician, Ornette Coleman, lives. He's a major guy, like with Train.
Yes.
You know, and he said to me in a talk, he said he thought music came before speech.
Yeah. He's right.
So maybe the first music you could have been hitting on a drum. Or
that's true.
I don't know if that's language.
Yeah, well, it is. It's a precursor of language. I mean, there's something known as the Neanderthal flute, and it's not 100% clear whether a Neanderthal deliberately made it, you know, poked out a bone and hollowed it out, or basically it was opportunistic. They found something that, for whatever reason, had those holes in it. But you can certainly play it as a flute. So that was probably before spoken language. But anyway, so the group of people that can warn themselves, hey, get out of here, these lines are coming, those are the people whose genes we have, because they survived. The group that didn't have that linguistic capacity, they were probably eaten up by lions, and their genes didn't make it into the next generation.
Just to put it in perspective in terms of the universe, and that is, as I understand, 99.9% of all species that have ever existed have gone extinct.
Yeah, well, it's
an evolutionary process to study and be aware of. In terms of not only that, but also the extended capability that humans have uniquely to make the environment different than in an Eden-like sense you are when you're embedded in nature, right?
Yes, that's right. It's a tough world out there. And it gets back to Darwin, survival of the fittest, and the wisest in our case, although sometimes we're not so wise. But that's why I would not say the smartphone might be in the top 3. And if we wanted to clarify it more and say it has to be a tangible technology, unlike speech, then, you know, then maybe the cell phone is number 1, or the smartphone.
They made a distinction with the smartphone.
Yeah, not the cell phone, the smartphone, right. But they're not wrong at all about the smartphone being extraordinarily important.
And it's part of a thing that's going exponential.
Absolutely.
It's not going to stop.
Not at all.
I mean, the Moore's is preceding Moore's law and all of that.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right. But here is the key to what the smartphone does and to what now anyone with access to the internet now has. For the first time in human history, any consumer of mass-produced information can instantly become a producer.
Yeah,
and that's extremely important. Now,
and publisher.
Exactly.
And producer and publisher.
That's right.
Yeah, all in one person. Yeah,
exactly.
That's pretty heady stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Right now, our friend McLuhan, back in the late '60s, early '70s, just once offhandedly remarked, you know, the Xerox makes every author a publisher, and he wasn't wrong, because with the Xerox machine, if you wrote something, you could Xerox it and send it out, but it was a very primitive form of publishing.
Pamphleteering or something.
That's right. Because let's face it, what you Xerox didn't look anything like the books that you read.
You had to turn the thing by hand. I've done it a lot with those early,
those
calling them to their next demonstration.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that was, in effect, the beginning of what we now have with the Amazon Kindle. You know, anybody who writes a book, and this is, you know, part of what I call the new media revolution.
That's right. Let me show it now. Let me show it. And if we can, Richard, maybe you can come in. This is a book, the more recent book of the many. You wrote Cell Phone and others. We'll track them all. This is called The New Media.
Right, and that's the second edition.
Second edition.
I could put out a new edition every month.
I think you could.
Things
you write
moving
it
so
prodigiously.
quickly.
Yeah, that's right. Trying to keep up with it.
That's right.
This is a beautiful book by one of the most knowledgeable people in the universe as to the implication of all this extended technology.
Thank you.
Honored to have you here, pal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That book, if anybody wants it,
yeah.
they could buy it instantly on Amazon, and it would be delivered instantly as a Kindle. That is a book in digital format.
Yeah.
But even more amazing, if you or I or anyone, and you don't have to be a published author, you don't have to be someone who's already involved in the media like you are. It could be anyone.
Yeah.
You write something, you can literally, within 15, 20 minutes, publish that book on Amazon as a Kindle edition.
Yeah.
So you no longer need the traditional publisher. And that is just one part of this massive revolution.
Yeah,
there are all kinds of consequences. For example, think about the fact, here's an example. I review television shows on my blog, infiniteregress.tv. And being the kind of careless person that I am when I'm writing very quickly and I publish these posts right away, sometimes there are mistakes in my reviews.
I remember seeing many mistakes in the things you publish. I mean, it's almost poetic.
Yeah, well, thank you. But that's because this book has been carefully read over, and you know.
No, but I mean, I know you a long time, man. You know, and you've always been right on the money.
Well,
if you ask me. A little typo doesn't matter to me.
I'm glad to hear that.
We're both of the same stamp,
right, well, I'm
so
the
we
typo
understand
king.
each other. Yeah, right. No, but I understand.
Typos are my middle name.
But as far as the patterns and the big picture and the intellectual, you're right on top of the cake.
Well,
you know, as far as
I
I'm
try.
concerned. Yeah.
But here's a point. I write this review of an excellent show that's now on called Rectify, which I, by the way, highly recommend.
What's Rectify?
Rectify is a show about someone who is freed from death row because of a technicality, and chances are he didn't commit the murder, but maybe he did, and it's just a fascinating psychological and even philosophic exposition of capital punishment, guilt and innocence, and things like that.
Is this a video production, book?
No, this is a television show. It's on the Sundance. Is it on Sundance? Yeah, I think it's on the Sundance television channel. Anyway, here's my point. I write a review of it, and I get a note from one of the actors in the show saying, I very much enjoyed your review, but the character's name that you're calling Billy Dean is actually Bob Dean, Bobby Dean.
Billy Bob. Well, Billy Bob's turned out in Arkansas, I think, isn't it? Billy Bob?
Yeah, it's all the same to me. Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, right.
At one point, I called this character Billy Jean, which just sounds like a Michael Jackson song, because I wrote the review late at night. So I said thanks, and I went back and I changed it. But imagine.
And you were able to do that. You corrected you. That's the thing for checking errors.
Exactly right.
Or proof checking, bit large.
That's right. The world is your proofreader now. Rather than a copy editor who, as you and I know, copy editors, they can be wonderful, but they can be real pains. Because they correct things that you don't want to be corrected.
Were you ever in the world of code writing and that kind of thing? Are you familiar with what's involved in terms of the consciousness of the people who write code? And what the implication of that process is? Because you got to, when you do code, everything has to be perfect.
Exactly.
It's got a great exactitude that's required.
That's right.
I didn't know.
No, you're right. Well, actually, my first science fiction novel is called The Silk Code.
Oh,
so
that's
in that
right.
sense, I'm involved in code.
Yeah.
But yes, a code is a recipe. And that's what's different between a code and other kinds of language and information. And whether it's a computer code or whether it's a DNA code, everything indeed has to be just right. Because, look, if there's a mistake in someone's DNA code, that could be very damaging to them.
Absolutely. Also, DNA itself, Watson and Crick. I mean, it's just that the whole thing is accelerating.
It is accelerating
enormously out of 200,000 years of our tenure on Earth, is it not? Do you think we're coming to a period of qualitative transformation of one order or another? Well, it's not just another phase of history, but something brand new is in the offing, or something out of the challenges that confront us now.
Well, you know, you may have heard of this. There's a term that's been floating around for a while, the singularity.
Singularity is near, Mr. Kurzweil.
That's right. And Werner Vinge wrote some science fiction novels, Vinge, Werner's first name.
I did a program with Kurzweil back in 1974.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was up on 128th, that highway around Boston. He had the machine. And I was there with the lady, and it was where you could put a piece of typescript on a Xerox-like thing, and it translated it autonomically for the blind.
That's great.
And then he went on to make the Kurzweil synthesizer.
Right.
Can't tell the difference between it and Grandway. You know, so he developed these things. But he's very brilliant.
Oh, absolutely.
Very brilliant. He's very much part of the people, the coterie of people who are intellectually concerned with the implication of this digitization of the whole world.
That's right. That's right.
In a leading kind of way.
Absolutely.
We want to run down who some of those people are and what the implications are of their work and their thinking.
Well, I'll tell you one person that you might not know about, I'll just mention.
Yes, please.
His name is Ben Goertzel.
I think I know that.
Years ago when I was editing a journal called...
Youngish.
Yes, exactly.
Everybody seems young.
No, this guy is really young. He's even younger than me.
No.
And I'm a baby. This guy's like now maybe like in his late 30s, early 40s. When he was in his 20s, and I had a journal called the Journal of Social and Evolutionary Systems. I was editor of the journal. I published about 7 or 8 articles from him. And he is a specialist in things like, can computers think? What kind of codes do we need? And he's also a great believer in the singularity. But I have to tell you, I'm not.
You're not? Okay.
No, because one of the things that happens is we always tend to be like super impressed with our own era, which makes sense because we don't know what the future is going to hold, and we can see where the past was.
You're drifting away, our consciousness.
Right. So, I mean, in order for the human species to literally change into something more, to something else, into a higher level, we would have to be talking about an invention again on the level of speech and abstract thought itself. And I don't think that these inventions are quite like that. Now, it is important. One of the things that, I've studied for years, and again, Marshall McLuhan and his mentor, Harold Innis.
And Harold Innis was important.
That's right.
And Bucky Fuller.
And Bucky Fuller, right. That's right. But Innis and McLuhan in particular were interested in the impact the alphabet had. And McLuhan, made many points, and historians recognize this, that the difference between civilizations that used hieroglyphics and the Chinese ideographic writing and civilizations that used alphabetic writing were very, very different. And those that had alphabetic writing made much faster progress.
That's interesting.
Because it's easier to... If you want to write about an abstract idea, how can you do a hieroglyph?
26 letters to work with, and they're all strung out linearly.
Exactly.
Linear thinking, specialization.
And they can mean anything. They don't look like anything. They don't sound like anything.
A crane or something.
That's right. They're not a picture, which is limited to what the what pictures look like. So the alphabet, I would say, is, as far as a communications medium, at this point, still is in first place. More so than all this code and smartphones, but they're giving the alphabet a good run for its money. But even the alphabet, although it changed human civilization,
underlaid it too.
But it did not change the nature of a human being.
Well, all right, that's true. That's true.
Because if we could go back in time, and my science fiction novel, The Plot to Save Socrates, talks about this.
I looked at it. I read a lot of it.
I'm confident, assuming that I spoke ancient Greek,
yeah.
that if I could go back in time and have a conversation with Homer, who, as far as we know, was pre-literate, because the Iliad, as far as we know, was written down centuries after Homer, if he indeed created it. And so how is it communicated back then? Just by word of mouth.
Oral.
And people
around
memorized.
The fire, maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Yeah,
so, I'm confident that if you were Homer, and you could actually probably play a pretty mean Homer.
Well, I could try,
And so let's just set the scenario, and I come back in a time machine.
Homer, right?
We're having a conversation, and I would say to you, Mr. Homer, what you wrote in the Iliad was really profound. And
I appreciate that, young man. Well, what have you got to do original import that was worthy of my consideration?
Well, that's great. And that's exactly the conversation I think we would have, because I think although Homer was illiterate as far as we know. I think that he was...
The oral tradition.
He was fully human in the sense that we can recognize it. So, but the singularity, if we're talking about the digital revolution, what those people are talking about, those futurists, Kurzweil and Goertzel and many others, is a change in our very humanity.
Well, there's some argumentation on that, whether it is like punctuated equilibrium, going through the whole process of becoming something new, is maybe short of that. After all, in a certain sense, the world works. You get up, the bus comes, and the electricity, it works. So you don't want to be making some sort of a change like cavalierly, all at once in some kind of way, like is the way punctuated equilibrium works.
That's
in terms of a new, that's Stephen Jay Gould and Eldridge,
Niles Eldridge.
Niles Eldridge in that. So, I mean, you got to keep that in mind. So it's a little bit, when everybody thinks, well, we got to make change and everything's falling apart. Right, I'm very concerned about the human condition on this day that we talk. There looks like there's going to be a big confrontation in Gaza. You got the IL and all that going on, and all kinds of other things going on. We just had a thing here, the Left Forum across the street at John Jay College. It was just jammed with 4,000 people and panels on how we have to get to Karl Marx or whatever in terms of getting the right system to bring some elemental... There's a lot of discontent. Free-floating angst in the world. It is very concerning. And it has to do a lot with what's going on in the effects of this digitization process is going on that isn't well understood, and it ought to be, importantly, by our leadership, political, economic, and intellectual.
That's absolutely
more than
right.
It is, right?
Yes, and I tend, by the way, to look at these digital developments as helpful in these world problems. For example, I think the Arab Spring was an extremely important development.
Now, that wouldn't have happened without what they call social media.
Without social media,
I want to get from you, Paul, some of the idea, what the hell this social media business? That's Facebook and this
Well, it's Twitter and YouTube.
YouTube, you count in that too?
Absolutely.
You do?
And here's why.
Because I think YouTube's been around quite a long time.
No.
God,
YouTube actually has not been around as long as Facebook.
Is that right?
That's right. YouTube came around the same time as Twitter.
Oh, wow.
So, 2006, 2005.
Oh, it's because I got programs that were produced before there was YouTube. They've been
That's
put
right.
I was getting mixed up in my chronology.
Listen.
That thing we did back in '99, there was no YouTube, right?
That's correct.
But it's now on YouTube.
That's right.
So I got to read. You see, I got to get my eras straight.
No, that's great.
I think humanity has to do. In a sense, that's a metaphor for humanity.
Yes.
Because we got all kinds of inherited institutions that can be recapitulated through the new media and so forth. So it's a confusing time in terms of identity, and that you mess with people's sense of identity, you're in real trouble, possibly politically or in any kind of way.
In any sense. But what happened with social media, what I call new media, because if new media are the internet, what social media are new media, because you not only receive information, and here's the crucial point regarding the Arab Spring, you can create and produce information and send it out to the world. So when instantaneously. So when people were gathering Tahrir Square, in 2010, 2011, the beginning of this, there have been demonstrations throughout history. There are demonstrations all the time. What made these demonstrations different is that for the first time, people take out smartphones, they take pictures of what's going on, they make videos of what's going on, and they put it up on YouTube.
That's right, instantaneously.
That's right, and the world can see it.
And they can also communicate almost in real time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And gather. Yeah.
That's right.
It's giving a new power to the people, which is a term you often hear.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. And people are feeling that and acting on it.
Yes, that's right.
And the people who are responsible for the inherited institutions that may be being superseded or transformed or something are worried about that.
That's right.
Because they don't have a vision that can deal with it perhaps adequately.
That's right.
Because your reified institutions are all around us.
That's right.
Mostly like every institution that exists. In a certain sense is out of date with the future.
Not in a certain sense.
That's a problem.
They all are. Yes.
That's a rather large problem.
That's right.
Right.
And however, it is a beneficial thing to give people this power, whether it's in the Middle East, anywhere. By the way, I was honored to find out just a few months ago that sometime later this summer, an Arabic translation of New Media will be published out of Egypt and made available throughout the Middle East.
That's good, yeah.
So the Arab Spring was not obviously completely successful. In some cases, you know, if you look what happened in Libya and then what happened in Benghazi, there were some bad consequences.
I was really unhappy with what happened in Libya.
I know, because
I liked Muammar Gaddafi a lot, and the country.
Yeah,
I liked it. I thought they were ahead of history's curve. Yeah. But I got off wrapped up in a lot of economic theory. Yeah. You've read a lot of economics. Yes. You have some sense of economics, and it seems to me all of these issues should not take leave of the importance of economics to informing or being joined at the hip with the political process. And we don't want to just ignore that in intellectualizing about something outside of the real world.
Well, I agree. Although speaking of outside of the real world, I would describe my economic position as being an outer space Keynesian.
Outer space Keynesian. That's a new one. That's not the same as a spaced out Keynesian, right?
No.
An outer spaced out Keynesian. It's beyond just a mere spaced out Keynesian.
Correct.
All right.
So because
I might know it come from Levinson.
Yeah, I don't care. The federal government, any government, should spend as much money as it wants, and it should use the metaphor of outer space. There's an infinite amount of energy out there. Yeah. That energy can be converted into capital sooner or later. Yeah. And both as reality, but even as a metaphor. So I mean, the branch.
There are people who are beginning to try and finance.
That's
that
right.
Kind of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you know, I mean, Keynes basically was right in the 1930s, and in fact, he changed his mind. He originally was a fiscal conservative, and then in one of my favorite all-time quotes, he changed his mind. And when someone challenged him on it, his response was, "When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?" And
that's a quote you find in quotes?
Yeah, John
I want that
Maynard
quote. I got a couple quotes on him on my page. I'd like to get that one. That's a good one.
When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?
But he was the one who set up all the political stuff, Bretton Woods and all that. After, he informed Roosevelt administration.
That's
the man's side.
That's right. Yeah.
He also wrote to his grandchildren in 1930, and this is apropos of something that's roiling. Who's this fellow now? Getty's. The guy that everybody's reading about the problem that's confronting the world, all the established economists and everything like that, are politicians.
Not John Paul Getty, no.
No. The Getty, I can't remember. Anyway, it'll come. But everybody's reading the book, and the theme of the book is that there is not enough ability by the system to get effective buying power or demand into the hands of the people, because the technology, including not only information but robotization, is becoming exponential. And Keynes said in 1930 to his grandchildren, be about now in their maturity, you're going to have massive technologically induced unemployment.
Right.
And the only way they have to distribute income to the masses of the people is through having what they call a job.
Right.
And how many you want to try and manufacture that and everything, it's just not going to work. And people are feeling that as a systemic challenge to the leadership element of the whole planet.
Yeah. Well, I agree. But part of the problem, and I'm more of a Democrat than a Republican. I voted for Obama and so forth.
Yeah, sure.
But, you know, and I've heard Chris Matthews talk about this. I have a friend, Steve Friedlander, who's involved in this. The former governor of Pennsylvania, I can't think of his name.
Yeah, and Rydell?
Yeah. He's involved in this. anyway, there's a huge amount of work in terms of infrastructure, real infrastructure, not digital infrastructure, real world infrastructure.
Like a water project.
Exactly.
Or a
bridges,
bridges,
roadways, all this stuff. You know, and it's a disgrace. I mean, if you look at Penn Station, it is a rat hole.
It's horrible. I live right near it.
Okay,
I mean, rabbit roaring.
That's right. And you know.
And it used to be such a handsome Beaux-Arts building.
Exactly.
It's a shame.
That's right. And I happen to love train travel. So, I mean, Philadelphia has a beautiful station. So,
but we still have Grand Central.
And we still have Grand Central.
Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. She
helped
save that. They wanted to trade it into that in the name of some economic paradigm.
That's right. But the government has to pour billions and billions of dollars into these projects. That will give people employment. And at the same time, I think the digital revolution will work itself out in terms of these employment issues because it's creating new kinds of jobs.
So does that end out in a pattern? I like patterns about different things. Is that out that the problem of distributing that the capital instruments enlarge? You got combines without even a driver, thousands of acres done without even a driver. And there's still the left, let's say, is trying to go back to Marx and say that all wealth is created by labor, and they sing the praises of labor.
Right.
But it's the capital instruments actually that are produced. Do you think that does not hold, or does that hold? And the trend in the modern world is for capital instruments to do ever more of the production, particularly with robotization. There is labor. There has to be some labor. But we shouldn't be putting our faith in the fact that all demand or buying power can be done to wage earners like serfs on a feudal estate, while the capital assets are all owned by a tiny plutocrat. They've become overwhelmingly wealthy at the top. Obscenely so.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that this book, everybody's reading from the president on down.
Yeah. Well, listen, here's my suggestion. I'm sure this wouldn't work. I would basically...
Listen, White House, National Security Agency, get your all antenna up. You're going to get it straight from the
Levinson's
Levinson's theorem.
I would raise the taxes on millionaires and above.
You would.
Skyrocket. And do what they do in England, in effect. And then no one who doesn't earn $1 million a year, below $1 million a year, you don't pay any taxes. And I think that's something everybody could live with. And
you want to run on president? You could run on. Do you think you could run on president? You're going to get a lot of backlog from Boehner.
Hey, you know what? I was the chair of the Department of Communication and Media Studies.
I know you were.
For 6 years.
You had to do all that administration
that basically is the beginning, middle, and end in my life of doing any kind of administrative work.
I know.
Life is too short.
I know. Can't we turn a lot of that stuff over to information systems?
We could, but you still have to have somebody make decisions.
But you can't do it because there are a lot of people that have jobs. It's the only way they can get bread on the table for the kiddies.
That's true, but again,
it's make work. And the model, the military model, is characteristic of the corporations. Private, it's not private sector, public sector only.
Right.
You know, people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do completely.
I do think it's a problem of that there's something better for humanity than being a wage slave on a feudal estate where all the assets, productive assets, whether it's the king and the castle, which are like serfs.
I agree completely.
Okay, they need a liberation.
Yes,
of
I
the
agree.
mass, and maybe we can get back to talking about DNA.
Okay.
And the metaphor of DNA, where you got 100 trillion cells in the human organism. Every cell matters, and every cell is in communication with each other as a system. We got to get to that kind of thinking about systems thinking, pattern recognizing concerning the human condition within a universal context, don't you think?
Yes, I do.
That's the change we're talking about with the singularity, whether it means physical change or a new species, but it certainly is a qualitative change, not quantitative in a normal sense.
It's a conceptual
but it might
change.
begin, at least you get into the right territory in terms of the nature and the overall condition of the change. It's not just another phase of history, it's a qualitative change they're talking about.
Yes, just like the Renaissance wasn't another phase of history.
Well, that was part of history.
Yeah, well, no,
that's
but
part
it was
of another. But not
that.
That's a little change.
Yeah,
you're talking about the big one.
Okay, this is
big one.
Yes, but but let me just say for the Renaissance, which was spurred by the printing press. We have the Protestant Reformation, changes religion. We have the rise of national states. We have the scientific revolution. We have the rise of public education. We have the rise of literacy.
So I mean, the Dark Ages.
That's right. So I mean, that was a pretty profound cluster of events. But one thing I wanted to say, about the digital revolution, because I think this is a very good point.
Yeah.
I often think, in fact, and I thought about this today as I was driving down here from Westchester, and I went through the toll booth in Riverdale, the Henry Hudson Bridge.
Yeah, right.
That now, and as we all know, for like at least the last 10 or 15 years, there were no toll collectors. You go through that, and it's automatic. Right.
Easy. That's cool.
Right, and but it's profound in addition to being cool, because you talk about work. I always used to feel bad for those guys. It was almost always guys, not women.
Boring.
Yeah, boring, and you're breathing in carbon monoxide all the time.
Day,
it's like the worst possible job. Isn't it an improvement for humanity?
Absolutely.
That job has been wiped out as a job for human beings. It's in effect being done by computers.
There is progress being made in the fullest sense of the word.
Right.
My daddy died on his 48th birthday. Okay, he was born in 1899, had a heart attack. There was no, in medical people or general society, there was no such thing as streptokinase, right? Streptokinase would be available almost like iodine to the public. And that's something that at the time of a strike, you could put a shot in, boom, it would have blown the clot away.
Exactly right.
Or another program we heard yesterday was Sumner. Have you met Sumner Glimcher? No. Great guy, 92 years old.
Oh, you told me about him.
He's a great guy. He was wounded in the Ardennes or at the Battle of the Bulge, and he was going to have his leg amputated. They finally, he was out in a long time. They finally just saved him, and everything. He got in a hospital, and they said, "You're going to cut off your leg," and he said, "Is there something we can do?" Young man, and everything. And they said, "Well, there's this new thing. It's called penicillin." And sure enough, they went. Almost it was experimental stage. They did. And it saved his leg.
Yeah.
Penicillin was. There's been a lot of progress.
Exactly.
The lifespan now for America is 78, not 48. That was the average age in 1948 when he died.
I'm hopeful it gets to be 110.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
We want to do
in good health. We want to do as much damage as possible.
Progress. There is progress within the old context that is dying. No, is coming to an end. But the idea is you want to be future oriented. That idea of the singular. I think they're trying to make a point that it's not just another phase of history like a Roosevelt administration or a tax cut or something that we argue about all the time in the news around the reified institutions we've inherited. The whole ball of wax is going to have to be transformed, subsumed, dealt with or something. And we don't have that intellectual leadership in forming the political process.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
We do have to. We have to deal with.
Yes. But again, there were profound things in history. The rise of democracy in modern times. So we have democracy in ancient Athens, which, by the way, was a very imperfect system. That direct democracy. They sentenced Socrates to death.
Yeah,
right. They had slaves.
They was based on slavery, and and Aristotle said it was necessary to have slaves so that you could have somebody to play the plectrum and spin.
That's
and he said it would be necessary unless the looms learn to weave. The looms have learned to weave.
Exactly.
And to sit there and do a thing like that, or the thing, Henry Ford was in Detroit. I was in Detroit in our family garage, or the grandfather's family garage. He tinkered in their garage when he was about 8 years old.
No kidding.
Then he went out and created Rouge, or River Rouge. The thing. And so the guy's got a job. All day, 12 hours a day, turn the same nut that comes by.
Right.
Now that's... I mean, you get some money, you can give, and you do, and it does get some demand out by the, but it is a pretty meaningless kind of life that they want people.
It is.
Most of the jobs that people have are pretty boorish and mean and very boring and degrading. Whereas they should be involved with creating new operas and creating new creative things.
Absolutely right.
But freed to do that.
That's right. The digital revolution is beginning to
maybe make that possible.
Yes, because again, getting back to Amazon and the Kindle, I often think about the fact that there are probably 100, 1,000, 10,000 or more times the number of authors that have books actually published.
Yeah.
Because in the traditional model, it was just too hard.
Right.
You wrote a book, you have to know an editor, the editor has to like it, it brings it before a board, they have to like it. So obviously I was successful in that realm.
Well, you write real well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. But, what about people who...
And your thinking's pretty good. In fact, it's excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Good combo.
It's good for my ego to come on your show.
And you do some good jobs with multimedia, too. You do some editing and all that,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm non-discriminatory when it comes to media.
Yeah.
I basically, to me, the oldest medium in the world, speech and writing by hand, that's great, and the newest media are great, too.
But I take it the administrative task of doing all the things that had to be done in that kind of routinized kind of way didn't exactly sit well with with you, although you had a sense of responsibility as chairman.
As
being an authority.
Stephen Jay Gould, God bless him, said at some point that the most enervating activity in his life was going to a departmental meeting.
Oh, it's terrible.
And he's right. However, what's even worse than that?
Worse than going to a departmental academic departmental
That's
meeting.
bad. But going to a meeting with deans.
Oh, that's even worse. Who's going to be the new provost?
Yeah.
And they fight like tigers.
Oh, I know.
Absolutely
I know.
to the death. It's really amazing how people get all exercise.
Forget about waterboarding.
Yeah.
If you want to torture somebody, put them in a meeting. Oh, I'll tell you anything you want to know. It's like, so, all right. Yeah, so that's what the problem is.
But anyway, that question coming back again to the fact that we're coming to a crescendo of something. I don't know. Well, but I think that way. Yeah. And I'm with the idea of the singularity, and I know. And Mark's doing this thing. He's going to get it going up in the autumn, I think. And I think it's good. There should be attention. They're major people. Did you go to the conference they had at Lincoln Center in summer last year? No. They had a major event there. They had the Kurzweils and all the major thinkers on what the heck's going on with all the cyber stuff. It was financed by a young oligarch out of Russia.
Okay.
And they had everybody there. Yeah, and it was a 3-day conference on this. It was really good, and it was looking toward 2045. It was beginning to get a thing out like that. It's not going to be the same world. Yeah. There's going to be major, major changes over which life and death struggles are going on right now in the news. If we get an advance or a sense of where we're going, an overarching system sense of where we're going, I think it's something that would be something called for. Bucky Fuller had the World Game, remember that? He did that, he put things together. Yeah. We're now worried about the National Security Agency and drones and things invading our privacy sense of it.
And we should
First
be worried
Amendment,
about
we
it.
should.
It's outrageous.
But still, it might get to a point. In genetics, again, back to that thing, you got 100 trillion cells in the human organism. Each one is in sync with the whole system, and there's something toward that. And then to get a maximally engaged entity, let's just say sociologically, the evolving Homo sapien drama.
Right.
It will be maybe at a certain point where they want to know, writing code is an addendum, but it'll get to be, well, we'll be in a situation where it's not all based upon fighting over scarcity, but that there is enough. That sense could permeate the society so that it would be a cooperative thing, and that the more they get to know about everything, the better the whole thing can. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand completely.
Do you understand? That's important, but it seems not to be able to get through because we're all caught up in economics, it seems.
Yeah. Well,
people have an economic interest in eating.
Yeah.
And that's being challenged by the fact that we have a commitment to the idea there's not nearly enough scarcity, and that may be something that at a level transcendent to the actual reality, I don't know if you want to call it ontologic or at a higher level, that we're transcending material scarcity. Is that something that is just thought of as ipso facto absurd by all our historical example? But it is something that ought to be up on the table of our major thinkers and decision makers as a possible thing to run down and do some research on?
Absolutely, but you don't have to do research. I mean, I think it's happening anyway.
It's happening in its own course.
And let me just say,
it's already happening.
That's right. As far as
to be discovered.
That's right. As far as the DNA code and its relationship to computer code and so on, it's important to bear in mind that intelligence in human beings arose in a living system. Right. That is, we're alive and our brains are part of our living system. Yeah. So thinking that we can somehow invent a thinking being that's not first truly alive, for want of a better phrase, is putting Descartes before the horse.
Oh, that's clever.
So,
Descartes.
Yeah.
Did you coin that?
Yes, I did.
Good for you.
Thank you. But there's an important. I was waiting for chance to. But the important point is, as far as all this study of code, and it's extremely important studying the DNA. That I think is an important precursor and an important foundation to, in effect, creating brains that don't exist in biological beings but exist in some other form.
I think I was thinking in terms of the means by which we set up institutional structures by which human beings interrelate.
Okay, well, that's happening anyway. That's what social media do.
Of course. Well, you think it is?
I know that it is.
Okay.
Because let me just give you. Okay, well, just I mean, this might
that's
sound.
In the realm of information.
Yes, but it's people getting together.
But the institutional structures, aren't they still all authoritarian?
Sure, they are.
They're all like a military.
Yes, that's true.
Corporate or anything. Yeah.
But two different things. Yeah. One of the things about Facebook, which goes in and out of popularity with kids and stuff like that. But one of the most amazing things that has happened to me and many other people that I know is I was friends with a guy, Joel Iskowitz, in 5th and 6th grade.
Yeah.
And back then, I was like basically singing songs, making music, writing a little. This guy was basically drawing pictures. I knew back then he was a very talented artist.
Right.
We were out of touch for about 50 years.
Right.
And through Facebook, we got back in touch again.
Good, yeah, great.
And now we're friends, and he does covers for my books.
Good.
But that is a very significant thing in the universe, because for the first time in history, you're talking about people getting together, and this cuts across institutions.
Right.
We now have the capacity to retrieve our complete lives in terms of our social, interpersonal connections. That never happened before. It might happen
going back ancestrally and everything?
Well, not no, but going back.
I had my DNA done.
Yeah, so how are you doing?
Well,
by the way, what percentage of you is Neanderthal?
Well, no, that's Walpole out of Michigan. I talked to him one time at the. I don't think they're part of the genome.
They are.
Well, I know some people. It's an argument.
1 to 3%.
Well,
this has been demonstrated.
Okay, that's the thing I know. That's the guy at University of Michigan, Walpole. I met him at the Natural History Museum and everything. But no, it had a thing. I gave him a little thing from the cheek. It's a guy, Spencer Wells.
Yeah, I'm going to do that too. But
it costs
a lot of money.
No, but it should. You know what they're going to get it down to? It cost $80 or something.
That's not
did
much.
it, and they send it off, and you get markers, and it's genetically, it's scientifically based.
Right.
And they had a genetic marker between me as an individual to an individual that existed. We all come out of Africa, 200,000 years. An individual that existed 80,000 years ago, an individual relating to me in terms of the understanding of the genetics of the Y chromosome.
Yeah.
Right?
Where was this individual?
80,000. He was in Abyssinia.
Okay.
And they can place it geographically.
That's fabulous.
There was another one in Iraq some 20,000 years later, another one in the Balkans, another one in South France, and then the one that comes up to England.
Excellent.
But they can do that. How can they get that kind of thing going? It's going in that kind of a way. We're not in it's not the world that our ancestors were
that's right.
Into.
No, that's an important point because I was talking about talking to people that we haven't seen in 50 years.
Oh, right,
But what you're talking about is part of it too.
Well, what I'm talking about is qualitative transformation.
Yeah.
Qualitative.
Yeah.
Like I can understand why people are trying to get it into punctuated equilibrium, a new relationship in the universe to what we've been for 200,000 years as a species. That kind of a context is one that suppose we had a liberated rather than an enslaved unjust order that has been the case throughout all of civilization. King in the castle eating grouse and everybody wallowing around in the mud. More or less that's been the case with guns being the thing that decided political legitimacy. It still holds, doesn't it?
Correct.
So we get past that, we get a world where everybody's realizing their full potential, like a gigantic jam session. Everybody hitting IC on their instrument the way they want and everything. Then there will be a resonancy that will interaccommodate us to universe at a level transcendent to what we've done in this species. Now that is synergetic.
Right.
And we don't know what that would be, but it's another degree up the evolutionary line if we get the ability to get through the eye of the needle to make it happen. 99% of all species have gone extinct. We're right on the verge where with our weapons we could we could extinguish ourselves for the first time since about 1970.
Okay, but a couple of things that's slightly more positive than that. One,
the positive thing is that we get to the world where everybody's liberated.
Yes, we survived.
Rather than enslaved.
We survived mutually assured destruction.
We haven't survived it yet. Those weapon systems are still, are they or are they not? That's
something
that
should be made. Around.
No, not some of them around. Are they still capable, as they have been since in 1962 with the Cuban Missile? There would have been some they could have destroyed civilization. They're on the verge, remember?
Yes.
I scared out of my wits.
I was too.
But they were limited. There would have been a few straggling survivors of the species. Apparently, after 1970, and I'm not at all sure because they got the start and all that kind of thing and everything, that the weapons remain, particularly not only just the atomic weapons, but the German, the Black Ops, and the kind of the wave weapons and things that they come up with, who knows what they've got. But that the weapon systems, finally, after 200,000 years, if they're unleashed in a spasm of hatred used to decide political issues, they would wipe out the entire Homo sapiens species. Do you think that's possibly the actual reality case, that we have that capability that we've never had out of history?
I'll put it to you this way.
Okay.
Being the irrepressible optimist that I obviously am, I think we do have something of that capacity.
That capability.
But I think we're still better off than when we and the Soviets were armed to the teeth.
No question.
And we had all these intercontinental ballistic missiles pointed at each other, which not only was the case, of course, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, but for another good decade or more beyond. And I think with the decline and fall of the Soviet Union, and obviously Putin, is no pushover and not an easy guy to get along with, but I still think nonetheless the world is, that clock that used to show,
there's the atomic clock. It's about 3 minutes now. It's gone up to 3 minutes to 0.
Yeah, I think it's got bad, not
You think
worse.
it's absurd to think about it?
Not absurd.
It can't happen.
No,
that's what the population
It could happen.
All we have to worry about is the tax code that's before the city council now. That kind of thing.
No, I agree with you. Most people don't think about it enough. No doubt about it, and it needs to be thought about.
As a part of a yin-yang thing about the thing to get to the idea. Can you realize the significance or potential significance of the adverse side of that destructive scenario, yin-yang, or some sort of thing, is that we have transcended scarcity.
Yes,
all the institutions were based on the assumption, ipso facto, for anything other than there's not nearly enough for one to win, zero sum, the other loses. All that is no longer ontologically or in terms of our capability accurate to what the reality is. That dawn is never mentioned anywhere.
I agree.
But you understand?
I do.
Okay. But now you can rant. Now you can rock and roll with your optimism.
Thank you.
Liberate the whole damn thing and the ecology.
Yeah.
We got that capability.
Grounds for optimism. The world was at war during the Napoleonic era. Then roughly 100 years went by until World War I and World War II, which were much worse than the Napoleonic era. And many people after World War II, given the fact that we and shortly after us the Soviets had atomic weapons, and then England and China and so on, and now
it's like a quickening pregnancy.
But nonetheless, here we are. It's 2014, and we're now more than 50 years after World War II, and although there have been some terrible things happening in the world, I don't think we're anywhere close to having a world war.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Do you think that would be because it would be illogical?
No, not because it's illogical. It's just that we've moved to such a different kind of world, and part of that different kind of world is communication, by the way.
Okay.
Because what happened in the
Yeah.
Cuban Missile Crisis, it was
It was Mr. Khrushchev backing down.
Yeah.
And there was also a report once of a lower officer in the Russian thing where he had said they'd pushed the button.
Yeah.
And it was geese.
Yeah. Right. Look, there were a lot of near misses.
Or also, you're not talking about anything rational with that. You're talking about something like 1914. Nobody thought it was going to happen.
That's right.
Irrationality.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm afraid, look what's going on in Gaza now.
I know, it's horrible.
They got tanks all like this, and there's great hatred and everything.
Yeah.
And you got ISIS.
ISIS.
Yeah, ISIS, or ISIS or L. The Levant is also up to Nasrallah and all that. So you got this thing going, and you got people who have weapons, and you wouldn't be talking that thing about unleashing. That'd have to be the United States.
Yes,
they have to do it. It would have to. Don't think rational. There's nothing to do with rational. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
It's happened with great irregularity, and those guys with that kind of thing that were a little limited in terms of capability now have the full tilt boogie to stop the whole thing.
Yes.
Now, we have the ability to liberate that we're not paying any attention to in terms of our economic policy, political context and everything, and the ecology, and we have the ability to annihilate.
Yes.
Which do you want?
Obviously to liberate.
Well, I do too, but why isn't anybody talking about the context that makes possible a liberation that has not been available to us Do you understand what I'm
do, but
yeah.
I think that you take too much of a black and white position.
Maybe.
You're saying the liberation hasn't been available to us. I say it's happening already.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm with you on that. I'm with
Arab
you on
Spring
that. But
is an
it's at the
example
level
of
of
it.
capability is
Yes.
not the reality.
Okay.
How do you take the capability and lapis under the future of the capability?
Yes.
And make it real.
It's real
What's
with
needed?
every
Some
person.
understanding of digital possibilities of communicating.
That's right.
Don't you think?
Yes,
you should have some people like Levinson talking about
Well,
it.
I agree. So here we are talking about
yeah,
it.
right.
But there's no doubt about it.
You should be up down in Washington at the White House and getting commissions started.
I'd be happy to go down there.
Okay, yeah. No, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but the point is, anytime a person does something on a smartphone, whether it's a business transaction, whether it's a personal communication with your wife or husband or someone you haven't seen in 50 years, all of these sinews are being developed between people.
Right. Yeah.
And that, I think, is uplifting us, notwithstanding these other problems. So I don't deny that these problems are here, but for the first time, if you look at World War II, here's an example. Well, I think we even talked about this on one of the previous times I was here. A group called...
We got to talk more like this.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. The White Rose is a group of basically kids in Nazi Germany who used a primitive photocopying machine to send out pamphlets for a few years that criticized what the Nazis were doing during World War II.
Really?
And eventually the SS caught up to them and tragically killed them. But even back then, for a couple of years, they were able to do this. And that, to me, was always a profound moment in history, because it shows that regardless of how oppressive a regime can be, or even a system can be in terms of what you're talking about, and I agree, the system as a whole is very regressive. The banking system, the corporate systems, they don't work for people. They work to make money for just a very few people.
But they can't be just overthrown. They've got to be subsumed.
Well,
so you got to be able
from the inside out, they're beginning to change.
Well,
so, for example, one of the things...
see evidence of
that.
Here's
Here's a minor point. I went to the...
We only got a couple minutes left from Saturday.
All right, well, so this again...
haiku.
Absolutely, yeah. I went to the bank. I was going to tell the story. I mean, because I bought something at Staples, and I got a $4 rebate. And here's an example of how the systems don't work. You have to fill out a whole form online, and they send you a check like 2 months later for the $4. But the check is such a weirdly shaped check that you cannot put it into any of these ATMs. So I had to go to the bank. Yeah, well, I want my $4. I'm such a cheapskate. So I went to the bank, and it was like, 4:30, and the bank was open, and I saw a teller and deposited it. But here's the point. Banking hours are better now than they used to be. But why is that? It's because the pressure of digital banking has forced these stodgy bankers to, there used to be like 9 to 3 bankers' hours. But there are no bankers' hours. They're open until 6 o'clock on Saturday. They're even on Sunday, some of these banks. So that's one of the, that's a
definite mark of progress. And any little mark of progress, let's catch up and sing his praises and account it to digitization.
Pancho Villa went to get his money out of the bank. I don't know if this is true, and I was in the movie Pancho Villa. And the banker said, "I'm sorry, we're closed." He said, "I want my money." The banker said, "I'm sorry." Pancho Villa pulled out a gun and said, "Give me my money." So we don't have to do that as much anymore. So that's really the point.
There's progress being made, but it's really. But we do have to get. And you've done monumental work. I really appreciate it. And this is a new book. I want to show them people here at the end. It's called The New Media, and this is a treatment of all the new media that's coming in, Twitter and all this stuff that younger people would just take for granted, but it's really important change. And it's just highlighting all of his long career. He also writes science fiction. Let's get that in quick. You got a new one. The Plot to Save Socrates, another in the series of science fiction writing that is really good. Have any of these been optioned for a movie or anything yet?
Well, as a matter of fact, this is going around, The Plot to Save Socrates, the script. And I should mention the Chronology Protection Case is a novelette I wrote, and they made it into a low-budget movie.
Thank you, Paul Levinson. So good to see you. Your pleasure coming back tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Paul. So good to see you. We're coming back tomorrow. Thank you very much. So that's it. That's the end of the program.
That was fabulous.